me welcome Craig Lesser.
Well, good afternoon. I like it. I hope you are this excited and passionate a year from now. I suspect you will be, but for different reasons. Thank you, Laura, for that very kind introduction. I'm not all that people or I'm cracked up to be, but we'll have some fun here. We've got an incredible panel. Gary Black, Brian Williamson, Brian Kemp, and we're going to have an opportunity to hear from all of you as well and ask some questions. What we want to do today is talk about jobs, because that's what economic development is all about. And first of all, congratulations to all of you for not only getting elected, but for stepping out and taking the leadership position. And I'm going to talk about that leadership position as it relates to economic development a little bit more. So my definition of economic development, as I said, expanding and sustaining the existing number of jobs and growing new jobs. And we're delineating between the two, articulating between the two, and we're going to talk about the separation of those two. Because Kia, as Laura was kind enough to mention, Caterpillar, Gulfstream, these are big companies. They make the front page of the newspaper when they make an announcement, either about expansion or about an investment in our state, providing incredible numbers of jobs, hundreds and hundreds of jobs. They make the headlines, and we love the front page pictures. All of you will enjoy so much having that hard hat on with the shovel, standing there. And you're going to be so proud. And I hope that happens frequently in your community. But that's not what it's all about. That's not where all the jobs are going to come from. We'll have a nice picture on the office wall to show our visitors with a little bronze plaque next to it. And it will be a wonderful experience. And the worldwide marketing and prestige that these announcements bring are absolutely critical to our economy. But most jobs, not only across America, but individually in our own counties, in our state, come under the heading of small business. Small business. Not Goodyear, not a big tire company, not Caterpillar, not any of the big names that we know so well. Statistics indicate that more than 80% and as many as 90% of all jobs in America and here in Georgia are in the small business sector. Think about that. That's where most of our jobs are. So while we seek those big job announcements, according to the University of Georgia and Georgia Tech, there may be more than 10,000 jobs that have been created by Kia, its suppliers and the ancillary positions that support those people, from insurance agents to fast food workers. But let's limit ourselves to these two areas, existing business and new business. So existing business is where your leadership is absolutely critical. Well, how do you exert that leadership? What does that mean? Well, it works differently in different areas of the state. And many of you, in running for office, in living in your communities, already know how the economic development process works in your community. In some instances, it's driven by a development authority, and I'm going to stop here for just a moment. How many of you are familiar with what is called an industrial development authority in your community? Okay, you put your hands down now. How many of you think calling it an industrial development authority is really about the 21st century? Think about it for a minute. No, think about it for a lot. Please, if you don't hear anything else I tell you today, think about working with your development authority and change the name from Industrial Development Authority. Because there ain't a whole bunch of industries that fit that old definition any longer. It's an important marketing component. All right, so it varies greatly from community to community. In some instances, it's a development authority that drives economic development, and sometimes it's the Chamber of Commerce. And sometimes, if you're in a county with a fairly decent-sized city that really drives the economy, It may be something out of the mayor's office or the city council. But for many of you, if not most of you, it's going to be at the county level, and it can be, doesn't necessarily have to be, but it can be driven by you at the county commissioner level. You should already know, but your work has just begun as a leader in the community, and this is what I want to share with you. First things first, you need to do an assessment. What do you have? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? All of you familiar with a SWOT analysis? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Pretty basic stuff. It's amazing to go into so many communities in the state and somebody will say, we want to have a big manufacturing facility here. Well, do you have access to water? Well, not really. Do you have rail and good utility infrastructure? Well, not really. Well, good. You're going to be in a real good starting point. You're going to do really well attracting a big industry. Do you have Wi-Fi? You know what a 22-year-old coming out of Georgia Tech and the University of Georgia is looking for, starting a new business? The fastest connection to the internet that they can find. And you know what? They don't have to be in a big city to do their business, to be an entrepreneur. They can be in the remotest area of the most remote county in the state of Georgia and get their business done. But they have to have access to the internet. It's a fundamental now, just like electricity was 100 years ago. Internet connectivity. Find out what existing businesses are being challenged with. We're talking about your existing business, the meat and potatoes of your economy in your local community. It may be as simple as dealing with a few regulations that need to be fixed, some signage, maybe how the front of the stores look like on some of your communities. But regulations that can be fixed if you listen to them, if you ask them, what is it that's challenging your growth? It may be calling one of our panel members for assistance, and we'll talk about that in a moment. It may be helping to communicate to your business that you have a technical school that's willing to provide specific courses designed to fit the needs of their businesses, and they will do that. Or it could be taking the lead to push a local school board to improve the high school dropout rate. Now, how many of you have served on school boards? Many of you. Now, I've talked to a lot of county commissioners who say, yeah, we've got problems in our school system, but I don't feel responsible for that. I'm not on the school board. Baloney. You are responsible. You are the elected leadership of your community. And if something's not working, I don't care if it is your specific legal authority, you have an obligation to your community to get involved and get that school board moving, to improve that dropout rate, to improve the test scores, because that's what our economy is all about now. Smart. Dumb doesn't make it anymore. And we've got to work on that, and you as county commissioners have that responsibility. It's about leadership, a theme that I think is running through this entire meeting. Now, pursuing new business, once again, doing an inventory. What are your strengths and weaknesses? How are the schools doing? What gives your county a competitive edge? What is it? Here we have, in our state, 159 counties. Now, everybody's pursuing economic development. Everybody. What makes you any different? What gives you an edge over other counties? Could be tourism. Could be having the finest hospital facility in the region. And fix those weaknesses. That is your responsibility, leadership. One more note before we go on to our panel. Working with, now I have a bias because I think the Georgia Department of Economic Development does an outstanding job. An outstanding job of assisting and supporting existing business in the state, but spending, true, an awful lot of time recruiting new business to the state. Now, how do you get into that pipeline? How do you make sure that when those project managers that work out of Atlanta travel all around the world recruiting business to Georgia, how do you make sure that your county is on the top of their minds? I had a boss once at Georgia Power Company. He was about 6'6", weighed about 120 pounds. When he stood sideways, you couldn't see him. Anybody here from Alabama? I'm sorry. My wife and daughter are Bulldogs. That's a good answer. Good answer. He said, so am I. This guy was from Alabama, and he had a forefinger that was about, I don't know, about yay big. And he'd stand in front of us at Georgia Power, and he wore this ill-fitting coat. And it just kind of, you know, he was tall and rangy. He'd say, you know what it's all about? You know, he was the boss. We were afraid to answer first time around. He said, it's all about relationships. That was one smart fella, because he's absolutely right. It's about relationships. It's about relationships locally, and it's about relationships at the state level. And you want to make sure that your folks have a good relationship with the Department of Economic Development project managers, that they know what your resources are, that they know the strengths you have, so that your county can be one of those counties that they're touting when they're talking to international investors from Europe and Asia and South America and elsewhere in the world. And when they're talking to businesses that want to come here from New York and California and Michigan and elsewhere in the United States. You want to make sure that they know that your county has the resources. Now, it's not just the Department of Economic Development in our state that has resources to assist you. There are other relationships that are equally important, like the Georgia Department of Agriculture, like the Secretary of State's office, and like the Department of Community Affairs. And we are fortunate today to have the experts, the leaders of those respective departments here to speak to you today and to share what they have to offer, their resources, and how you can connect with them. And I would urge you now, in thinking about what these gentlemen have to say today, when you go home, don't be shy. Bother them. Annoy the crap out of them. Because you're working for your communities, the people of Georgia, and you know what? So are they. That's exactly what they do, and they are the best. I've known Gary Black for many, many years, more years than probably either one of us want to announce. Gary he started his career with the Georgia Farm Bureau, leading the Young Farmer Leadership Development Program. Thanks, Laura, for doing this. I appreciate that. And you should too, Gary. Because if I just did it off the top of my head, the introduction would be over by now. He served 21 years as president of the Georgia Agribusiness Council. This man knows agriculture, and he knows everything there is to know about it in our state. During his career, he led the development of Agri-Trust of Georgia, a renowned workers' compensation insurance program for farmers and agricultural businesses. He's an active supporter of agricultural programs that expand opportunities for young people, and he serves in advisory capacities for 4-H and FFA. He earned his degree in agricultural education from the University of Georgia College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences in 1980, and is a past president of the college's Alumni Society. Before he comes up here, remember the number one industry in this state is agriculture. Commissioner Gary Black.